Alrighty, I'd like to, it's my pleasure to introduce our next two presenters. We've got Kata O'Donnell, who is a teacher in charge of health at Tamaki College, and Aaron Mead, who's the Deputy Principal at Paraparaumu College. They're going to do a bit of a tag team approach here this morning about how they're preparing their students for the HPE scholarship. So a great follow-on from our guidelines chat that we had last period. So I'm going to hand over straight into you, Kata, and you can take it away. All yours.
Kia ora, Juliet. Kona te maru, nā te airana, me ngā te koroatia o ku tātai whakapapa, ko te kākua hauara ki te kura o Tāmaki, ko Kata tōku ingoa. Nau mai haere mai ki tēnei kōrero. I thought I'd just start off today with talking about Kua Awatea, the name and the title of the presentation. When I first saw the Power Up light bulbs and what it stood for, I thought a really cool representation of that in Māori is this idea of the light, the learning, the growing, and how us as kaoko can grow, and that light within us can be shared with others. Our students' lights can grow and they can share that with others too, and hopefully for the better of our communities. So that's why today we're looking at Kua Awatea, tis daylight. So something our lovely Michelle Johansson talked about yesterday, I was just really inspired by her kōrero. She said this: sometimes teachers can think these kids don't fit our system, therefore they are wrong. Instead, how can we change the system to include our kids? And I thought that was really, really powerful and really poignant for what I was hoping to share with you all today around how can we look at taking our traditional health and PE scholarship programs that are very heavily designed as someone works really hard by themselves, maybe with a bit of help from others, bit of support, to then achieve as themselves and get this reward scholarship. But how could we look at it slightly differently, maybe, to really include our young Māori and Pasifika tauira learners or students and their cultural knowledge, but also really foster them to succeed. So I guess some of the ways that we could foster them to succeed, certainly through culturally responsive pedagogy. And important to note that while obviously culturally responsive pedagogy ranges across the globe with our many different beautiful diverse nations and ethnicities and cultures, I'll be specifically focusing on Pasifika and Māori youth tauira, because at my kura we are 91% Māori and Pasifika. So there are these ideas around and acknowledging and drawing on the fact that our young people, our tauira, have boundless potential, that relationships are at the center of everything, or as Michelle said yesterday, they are everything, with both our tauira and their whānau, that learning and success can actually be viewed as a collective achievement, and that there's a huge importance when it comes to our own learning in this space to really help these young people and support them tautoko through their haringa journey. I'll also cover a little bit about what we've changed this year in our program for 2020, and I've left some videos that I can share at the end. They're a bit long for the presentation, but some actual voice from the student who got the top scholar last year, Gloria Tuitapau, and her mum, Saini Tuitapau. So just want to acknowledge these two documents, Tapasa, the Cultural Competencies Framework for Teachers of Pacific Learners, and also Tātai Ako for our Māori learners. These are two really, really awesome documents that I 100% recommend if you've got a bit of time anywhere in the future, and possibly every year to actually come back to really refresh how you and I and we all can continue to incorporate and ensure that our Māori and Pasifika tauira are catered for and supported through not just HPE scholarship, but really all our teaching and learning. So we're starting off with this first one here. The idea, when we're looking at program design that reflects Māori and Pasifika tauira having boundless potential. So I've got a couple of questions, and then I thought in the next slides they would then have some information or some ideas about how you could action those. So if we look at some of these questions, what is the current process for tauira entering and participating in your program at your kura? Who's benefited by that? Who's excluded by that? Who is the program, or how is the program designed, and by who is it designed? What members of the community are included, certainly why and how, and what strategies are used to ensure Māori and Pasifika are encouraged and supported to join, supported to unpack their own cultural knowledge and tools as a resource for their topic, and also thirdly, supported throughout to ensure a quality submission. All three of those are really, really key to exploring their potential. So some ways that we could action this. I'm a really big advocate for inviting all, not just the kids that have achieved at this particular level on this subject, not just the kids that other teachers have tauira, who have identified as high achievers, not just the kids who we may perceive as being the ones who would most likely succeed in this particular thing, everybody. Okay, not year 9 to 13, year 13, year 12. Have that talanoa, have that whānau, have that hui for tauira and their family and their whānau about the scholarship process, the skills it develops, possible pathways and opportunities. That's really, really important for our Pasifika and Māori whānau, that it's not just about doing this thing now and then gaining this particular achievement. It's how is that going to help them to help others and themselves in the future. So really allowing time and space for discussion of shared dreams, hopes, expectations, and also any potential barriers that may arise. Create strategies together to encourage the resilience throughout the program. Because as you all know, it is really difficult. It is so difficult. So finding the best ways to support each other and themselves, very key. You could really look at, if you are wanting to, like I know in our case for a lot of our young people, the writing process takes quite a long time to actually think from here onto paper, onto the computer, in a way that they don't feel rushed. There's a possibility of starting, I guess, the year before, not necessarily into looking into anything particular, but continuing to develop some of those critical thinking skills. I think in the last session it was discussed, I mean, we technically start in year 9 if our program is solid, but also you could look at doing things, especially talanoa. Talanoa is your connection, your discussion, your really deep, rich conversation and connecting with someone. You could actually do that in term 1 with Polyfest, especially if you've never necessarily connected with our Māori and Pasifika whānau before. That's a great place where a lot of the whānau come in to rally behind their young people. So if you're wanting to make connections then, that's definitely a go. Certainly creating opportunities for talanoa throughout the program, not just having it between you and the tauira, but actually how can we keep up those conversations with whānau. Even the idea of co-constructing elements of the program, exploring strengths of your tauira and their whānau. Could they come in for tutorials? Could the young people go out to experience things within the community? We could certainly look at inviting past Māori and Pasifika tauira, possibly from our school, possibly not from our school, especially if they're from the same area, they're most likely to know each other anyway. But those who have gained scholarship in any subject, really to share and inspire that next generation coming through. And also incorporating the use of storytelling, really in particular for this boundless potential with this difficult concepts and promoting resilience. I know that when I use a story, and it might be a personal one, it might be a random something that I've made up, but when I use it, there is just this great deep connection of learning, which is awesome. So the second element here is program design and kaoko commitment to relationships being central. Relationships, as Via Johansson said, everything. So some reflective questions. In any 1 week, could you identify the progress that has been made by each tauira, and how could I acknowledge that? In any 1 week, could I identify what specific academic and emotional support each tauira need, and how could that be provided? What time is spent with each tauira and their whānau beyond class time to support their progress? What are the opportunities for informal and formal talanoa? How, where, when? All of those questions being quite important to process. And that's tauira with tauira, that's tauira with kaiako, that's tauira kaiako with whānau, and that's tauira kaiako whānau with the community as well. And what intentional time is set aside to connect and laugh? Connecting, laughing, I mean, we all love it. It's so good for the soul, but also a really good motivational and engaging tool throughout our learning processes. So actioning this, ka nohi ki te ka nohi, face to face. Before, during any learning or skull writing, I'm constantly having conversations around where are we at mentally, what's going on socially. Literally, these are the questions, what's happening spiritually, because they're so attuned to Hawara now. And then how can I best help them in that particular circumstance? So if 5 of the young people have started doing something, I might then spend 5 minutes and catch up with each person. Nothing about the scholarship at first. It might be solely on the context of what's going on in their life, and then we can come to scholarship after that. Establishing Kai time is really important. When I asked for feedback from last year, all of the young people had said that having porridge, because we had our tutorials every Tuesday, I think every Wednesday morning from 7 till 9, having that warm porridge to fill the belly, they just loved it, and they felt that we could all really connect together while we were eating the porridge. That was really cool. Regular Kata and Aaron connection time and tutorials and outside of class, things like Polyfest, sports, hobbies. And look, you don't have to go to every single sports game or every single chess match. You go once and that kid sees you and they're so stoked with it. And then you could even pull out some of the things that they do at that particular activity and see if that could be incorporated within their scholarship writing. Developing activities that provide insight into tauira identity and passions for topic and how these could be explored and analysed. This is really, really key, and what was really powerful about last year was trying to work with each of the young people, and Gloria in particular, who was the one that finished, really figuring out what I could do, and particularly connecting with our other teachers in the school who are Pasifika, and drawing on their knowledge to be able to help explore, I guess, her topic. The idea of sharing your own experiences, same thing, personal storytelling, being vulnerable. I mean, obviously only whatever you're comfortable with, but there's this huge barrier that seems to be just completely gone when the vulnerability is shared. And also affirmation. I mean, we all love affirmation, but our young people, there's sometimes this massive whakama and disbelief that I can't do it, especially if I compare myself to maybe other people who might achieve at a slightly faster rate. So really figuring out ways to affirm them. And a lot of times that can be verbal, or it can be with food, that too. Okay, so actioning this. Talanoa, hui, whono, allow time to share. Have a think about where this could actually happen. Spaces are super important. Marae, whale, youth centres, local community places. Places where our whānau, the places they know, the places that are acceptable. A lot of the places in certain communities, I certainly know in ours, are free. And so that's really, really cool for our young people and us to be able to share that space without having to put too much financial burden. Connecting with family through cultural knowledge and co-teachers for tutorials, provide obviously koha and kai to our whānau members that participate in that. And that also gives them and us a chance to share concerns or stresses and co-construct ways forward. Once again, as Whaia Johansson has said, never underestimate the power of a village. Very, very powerful. Celebrate achievement throughout the process. This is super, super important. The product is awesome, and that's something that we're aiming to achieve, but the process is actually just as important, and really reiterating that, and the skills that we're learning and the connections that we are forming, I personally believe are just as important. So how can you, and we acknowledge that. It might be a 2-minute conversation over the phone with whānau, just giving them an update. Maybe someone's done an amazing paragraph, and wow, give them a call, they will love it, literally 2 minutes. Sometimes emails, but I don't know what it's like in your community, but in my community, we don't have as many whānau accessible through emails. Okay, third one, program design that views both learning and success as collective achievement. So what does learning collectively look like in our scholarship program? How can it be incorporated more frequently to support Māori and Pasifika tauira? What unique skills, talents, and knowledge does each tauira have that could be utilised in their topic? How can we play to their strengths? How do we celebrate progress together? As you can see, there's a whole lot of themes. And what strategies can be used to motivate, engage, and awhi tauira to start, endure, and complete the process? So this in action. Establish right from the get-go family-like learning environment. And I call it that. And the question we talk about day one, what does us approaching scholarship as a family look like this year? And that doesn't just apply to any Māori and Pasifika whānau, that applies to everyone. People love belonging, it's inherent in here. So this whole idea of commitment to a group, not just self, is very, very powerful in moving the waka forward. Using the marae, the whale, the rooms, once again recognised by our Māori and Pasifika students, especially ones that might have extra devices. Not all our young people have devices. Often there might be a couple within a household, or for many of my young people, they might have a device each, but there's one charger between 6 of them. So having rooms with extra devices and things is really, really important. One day wānanga intensive. So wānanga to connect, to communicate, to really learn together. So your first one could certainly be around whakawhanaungatanga. Your second could be more around your scholarship concepts. And then your third, hopefully by then, this is not 3 days in a row, by the way, this might be spread across several weeks, is actually hopefully the whakamā, our tauira will be more confident to be able to share and actually give each other feedback, because that's something that's very, it's difficult for all of us, I guess, to share things. So if that relationship has been built, that kind of peer assessment activity or support can come later, and they're actually really grateful for it because they trust each other. Once again, open that invitation to whānau. There's no, this is the kids and this is our whānau, this is all of us, come in. You might have to be quiet at certain times, but come in. We love you, we want you here to support. Encourage students to embrace their cultural identity in the process and the spaces. So not just within the scholarship report, but even within the breaks. It's really, really important we get the kid, the tauira, going outside. They'll do their own TikToks and they'll teach some of the others one of their new, not so much those TikTok dances, but a Pasifika or a certain type of new dance move or something, and you just see them having the best time together, and it really gets that those endorphins going, so when they get back into class they're ready to go on to it. Same thing, Talanoa Whānau Hui at the end to celebrate newfound skills, submissions and success. And then also I'd really recommend a lot of group learning. Obviously I know that we can't necessarily write it together, but we can totally learn together and unpackage a lot of those really difficult readings or concepts together. Okay, just a couple of extra ideas on this. Use of storytelling, once again, to unpack concepts and make connections. If you look over Gloria's report from last year, I know she was looking at a couple of other reports too, you'll see there's a really strong story to start and a really strong story to end that's actually connected, and then throughout as weaves of stories. It's just amazing. Critical thinking activities that encourage tauira to examine their own attitudes, values and beliefs and their culture. Now here's the key, it needs to be in a mana enhancing way. Gloria's key kind of conversation with me as she was writing this last year was, how do I make sure that I am upholding the, she used a different word, I used mana for it, but how do you uphold the mana of my culture while also examining and questioning certain things within it for the well-being of our people? That's super important. And one really cool activity I remember going to, I think it was a PENZ conference with Annie McFarlane a couple of years ago, and she did the analysis, I don't know if you're there, Annie, she did an analysis of a muffin and the different questions that you could ask with a muffin. Where does it come from? What are the ingredients? Who does the packaging? All of that kind of thing, as almost like a literacy activity. And what I'm hoping to do this year is actually get some of the students to pick their favourite food within their culture and do the exact same process, essentially. Unpack that food to the absolute every part of it, critically examine it, and then we'll cook it and eat it together. But just really unpack it and see what kind of talanoa can come from that. Opportunities to explore various learning and research styles. So I do something called a learning style research blast, and you'll see there's a number before it, and that number represents a time. Now what this means is I might pick a particular topic, or the kids, the tauira might pick a topic, and I will find 3 resources, one that's, or 2. One that's a visual resource, like a reading, sorry. One that's like a visual infographic or something like that. Another that's a reading, and a third that is a YouTube video. and they can choose one of those three, or they can pick a fourth, which is to tell an or with someone. And for that 40 to 60 minutes, they have to watch that particular or use that particular resource that has a specific learning style, and then draw content from that, and then we come back and share that together. And I find that the tauira just really feels so much more comfortable as they're learning different ways to research, I guess, and then sharing that together. And having a time limit really seems to get them right in the zone straight away, prevent the procrastination. Using Pasifika constructs and context, so the Pasifika Success Compass, that's in the Tapasa document. Whanua, te wheke, te waka, atawhaga, the mana model, te ako, now I've only just learnt this one, tike Māori, I hope I said that correctly, to enable them to reflect on their own understanding, but also role modeling from like an academic lens, how other Pasifika and Māori people have used knowledge that is from within their own cultural identity and drawn on that. Learning in pairs, taking ownership for concepts and ideas, and researching and sharing back, that whole idea of experts. Once again, I wouldn't do that till much later in the process, once the walls have come down, shall we say. And a lot of analysing and annotating past exemplars and readings together, that being the key, 100% together. Okay, last one, I think. Yep, program design that reflects continued kaoko growth. So what is my current understanding, and how could I build my own knowledge of the diversity of the Pacific? A lot of our young people can get quite frustrated, rightly so, when they are proudly Samoan and someone thinks, or a teacher thinks, that they're Tongan, or just labels them as, oh, you're from that place, as opposed to actually getting to know where they're from and huge cultural significance that holds. So how can we learn that, really? What new learning am I participating in that contributes to Māori and Pasifika wellbeing, resilience, and success in scholarship? What cultural protocols and sensitivities do I need to be aware of throughout? What barriers prevent Māori and Pasifika from completing scholarship? What school-wide wellbeing approaches could mitigate these? Shouldn't just have to be your responsibility. How do I show that I value and care for Māori and Pasifika tauira? And how am I ensuring equity throughout this program? Really, really important. So actioning these. Link in with NZHEA PENZ on those like expertise supports. I'd certainly start planning earlier if you're able to. It certainly allows for family commitments that arise throughout the year. Certainly post-COVID, there's a lot online of certain PDs within this learning space, and a lot of them are free. So certainly see if you can link up on there. A lot of them on Facebook as well. That's how they send out the invitations. Reflective and responsive to issues of the Pacific through ACOR. So how can these be used to support the scholarship writing? And also constant reflection of the scholarship program. What contexts dominate discussion? We've got to lean into the uncomfortable. We're not going to know everything. We don't tell the kids we know everything, hopefully, because we certainly don't. But lean into that, continually check our own biases. We all have them, our own limitations, and as the kids would say, level up. Okay, so how has the program been adapted? Encouraging students to utilise topics that they are currently learning about in health and other subjects. That's going to be the key. So looking at, for example, the 3.2 and the 3.1 internal and external around poverty, and looking at the New Zealand child and youth wellbeing strategies, alongside possibly comparing their experiences at home. That's a possibility. Polyfest has actually been cancelled for now 2 years in a row. The first was due to the Christchurch massacre. I hope that's the right term. Apologies if it's not. What happened in Christchurch. And the other one is the, obviously, COVID. And so how has that affected our young people themselves and both their community? Those are some of the biggest events of the school year, just as big as the ball, if not bigger, and what's been the impact there. Also, the various experiences of COVID lockdown across the country, the inequalities, the impacts, and then possible localised solutions. Another thing that I've started to do a bit more has been the incorporation of digital tools where possible. Really, really important that we don't isolate our young people who don't have devices. Excuse me, so finding ways where we're able to lend devices, or maybe there won't necessarily be a lot of these activities, but my year 13 class, a lot of them do have devices, which is great. and they can use some of mine if they don't. But there's 3 activities here. I'm just looking at the time, probably won't have time, but when you send them out, there's links to each one of these here. Kialo Ed is I probably actually could do this. Just like all of them, there's kind of premium features, but essentially it's like it's a debating app, and you can put a particular, I guess, what do they call it? Statement. So I just said parents and caregivers should always tell the truth. And then the kids can put down, or the tauira can put down a pro, they click on this and they put their pro claim or they put a con claim. And then what happens is if someone disagrees with their claim or agrees with their claim, they can put another claim down. So I could go, I think one of these ones here had 2. So this person said not necessarily all the time, and then this person agreed with that and put that in here. And then you can continue all the way down. So essentially it's creating and allowing students the chance to debate, but in a really thoughtful way. Another one that I certainly use that's quite good for planning is, they call it Miro, it's not a Māori name, and essentially you double click, you can write whatever it is that your topic's on. It's just like an online brainstorm, really. Put your topic in, might click another thing, put a topic in, and you might use your different colours to connect them up. Here was just an example of something I've done with my juniors around gratitude. But if you see, you can actually expand it quite far. So you could have a whole lot of different topics that kids explore and try and link things in, or even look at those underlying concepts. That's another one. And then Screencastify. I'm hoping, oh, that's the wrong one. I'll switch off there. Resume, stop sharing. Stop screen sharing. Yes, sorry. Oh no, what have I done? Carl. Oh no, good, thank you. Thanks, team. And then Screencastify is essentially something where you can record yourself. It could be video or sound with something in the background. So I will, with a lot of kids' feedback, especially those kids that are audio learners, they'll read, they'll go onto their scholarship report, and then they'll click on a comment, and it will have like a 2-minute video from me giving them some feedback. And a lot of them prefer that because they feel like it's instant and they understand it clearer. Linking in with other kaiako, certainly our other Māori and Pasifika kaiako, they have a lot of connections with the whānau, so that's really powerful. Teaching APA explicitly, super powerful. After school weekend wānanga with lifts home, it's a huge part. And then also practicing mental health tools to help manage stress, a big one for my past students. There are some videos on here if you're wanting to listen to some of our, to Gloria's experiences and Sandy's experiences. And there's also just a bit of a plug, a resource that was based off Gloria's report from last year that Jenny and I have worked on alongside Gloria with a whole lot of activities for Pasifika students, and that's free on the NZHEA page. Ka pai. Over to you, Aaron.
Mike. Kia ora, everybody. But before I start, actually, I think I'll just acknowledge Kata. Your enthusiasm and your passion for your students comes through really strongly, and it's a real privilege actually to be presenting alongside you, and you're clearly doing some wonderful things. Gosh, your enthusiasm comes through strongly, so that's awesome. I have been involved with scholarship at our school for some time now. I think I've been running our school program for about 10 years, and it's certainly evolved over time. I was thinking about what would be interesting for people, so I've compiled a list of things, but I'm also really keen to get other people's ideas about what they would like to look at. So this is what I've put forward of something that we could look at. So a timeline of how to prepare a scholarship student, touching on some key things related to my program around critical thinking, threshold concepts and how I run tutorials, and then looking at some teaching tools that I use and some different approaches that I apply at different times. So I can just get used to this. But what would you like to know? Are there some questions you would like to have explored or looked at? You have the question function, I believe, everybody. So if you want to have a bit of a think about, are there some things that you'd particularly like me to touch on, or if you've got any specific questions about preparing students for scholarship, it'd be great if you could maybe throw in a question, and then we could, I'll try and pause at different times and look at them as we go. Right, so have a think about what you'd like to look at. While you come up with some questions, this is basically a timeline of how I approach my scholarship program. So we identified students as early as year 11 and year 12 and start encouraging them to think about taking scholarship. It's very well promoted within our school. We've actually over a period of time had quite a lot of success, and that kind of breeds more success, and students are aware of past scholars. Connecting in with something that Kata touched on was the idea that it's not an exclusive group. It is open to everybody, and so we don't filter people out. If they're willing to give their time and come to our tutorials, then they're welcome to attend. I include year 12 and year 13 students, and they're more than welcome to come along. Also include students who don't take senior health or PE, and so it's really quite an open group. It obviously when it gets to the business end of things, the group does get a bit smaller. So generally my tutorials would start in term 1, and we run a morning session, and then I run a lunchtime session for some of the kids who can't make it in the morning. Term 1 and term 2 are pretty much focused on the threshold concepts, and we explore them very broadly, and we make strong connections to things that are currently happening in society. Term 3, students start to focus on their selected topic a bit more specifically, and I start to target the tutorials a little bit more about what they want to explore. And students are often bringing things to the tutorials that we explore, and we start to unpack things. We go from a group setting more to individual work. So as term 3 progresses, I'd be working with very small groups or one-on-one at times with students. But initially in the year, it's definitely on a bigger scale, where I'd have up to 10 to 15 kids in a tutorial generally. Term 3, the writing process begins for them, and we place a lot of emphasis on the introduction. So the kids we start with the introduction, and that's where I give a lot of the feedback to them at the introduction. As they progress, I find that I become increasingly more time poor. I can't share myself around as much to the students, so they once they're set up and we've unpacked what their topic is going to explore, and they've got a really good introduction, then they're pretty much away. I encourage them to connect with other members of their network, like their family members and some of their other teachers, to help them with proofing and some more specific feedback. Term 4 is definitely for them to refine and develop their report. We include, I like the idea of a wānanga, what Kata mentioned. We run a writing day. So we release the kids who do School PE from the timetable for one day. And on that day, I'm released as well. And we're pretty much just working on their initial part of their plan and their introduction. And once they've got that right, they're really into it. So let's carry on. Scott's put a question there about the threshold concept, so we'll come to that. it's something that, I will unpack with you. So critical thinking is obviously a major for scholarship PE, and that has to come throughout your program. If your junior program isn't working at a high level of critical thought and analysis and evaluation, then it's very difficult to start to expect kids in year 11, 12 and 13. So we have backward mapped in our college about what are the levels of understanding we would like our students to come through with. And our junior program has been totally evolved based on that. So year 10 program and year 9 programs are based around assumptions and whakatauki, and that's how we start to build the critical thinking processes for students. I've included the definition from our curriculum, and it's full of great concepts around assumptions and the idea of challenging people's thinking and examining and questioning. These things hold true at all levels. So whatever we do with our school students within our tutorials or one-on-one sessions, it always has to come back to this. It's not about the transmission of knowledge. The students can access the information they need in lots of different ways. The time that you spend with your school students, whether it's in a group setting or an individual setting, has to be focused around critical thinking. You're not just teaching them. So tutorials we run, it's pretty much me sitting with the group, talking to students. We have tables with whiteboards, and we're discussing things. Very seldomly would I be up the front trying to transmit knowledge. It's not good use of your time when you only have so much time with the kids. Okay. All right, so I just wanted to acknowledge Gillespie and McBain. This is something that's informed my school program a lot. So these are the precursors to being critical. The idea of students making meaning, the idea of understanding some of these bigger concepts around like social construction or power. Now, these all start to feed into what threshold concepts, and that idea that we are trying to identify assumptions people make. So pretty much the fallacies of our thinking and the flaws of our logic are the things that we want to spend our time unpacking. And we need to encourage the kids to really view multiple perspectives, and that idea of having fresh eyes, trying to put aside your bias and your predisposition to certain viewpoints, and get them to view things with this clarity. I often make the example to that old movie, The Matrix, and this idea that we actually have to start to see things very differently, and that everything is connected in some way. And once they get that, they start to, the critical thinking becomes a way of being, for sure. Oh, okay, let's move along. One of the tools that I use to develop critical thinking is the camper model. This model I actually have laminated on the whiteboards, and when I are discussing anything and I'm up the front using the big whiteboard or the whiteboard on the table, I'm trying to arrange the ideas and feedback under these types of headings. So the idea of the consequences of coming from a train of thought, or are there assumptions, or what do these types of, what does this issue actually mean? So trying to get the kids to extrapolate the actual meaning of something, prejudice, and sourcing evidence, and whether making judgments whether these claims are relevant or reliable. This type of thing really helps the process of critical thinking. There's a lot of models related to critical thinking. I don't use one exclusively. This is the one I use predominantly. The CAT process was another a wonderful model that I think it was McBain and Gillespie again developed. It's an awesome model, and it's a really go-to for a starting point. But it has to be a way of being. Every interaction needs to be based around critical thinking. Okay, so getting to the threshold concepts. So firstly, to define what a threshold concept is. So these are core concepts. They're not necessarily listed in any curriculum or workbook, and they're not exclusive to a set of concepts by any means. That they can be anything really, but they have to be something that once a student has a good understanding of it, it transforms how they see things from that point forward. So that eureka moment, I think, was something that Kata mentioned. Kids start to have these when they start to apply some of these concepts. And effectively, they allow us to unlock certain doors and pathways to understand things differently. And they start to enable the students to transform and interpret things differently from a different perspective, or all of a sudden they start to see the influences or the consequences of something. If they don't have this kitty of concepts, then they do struggle, I find, to take that learning to a higher level. And their writing is often very much it becomes very regurgitation of other ideas, or they just start to storytell, or they just start to reflect, and it's all about their own experiences and limited to that. Once they start to apply these types of concepts, it just opens up. So what are they? So these are the ones that I use for a start. It's this is taken from a Google site that I share with the kids. Like there's probably debate about whether some of these are actually threshold concepts or not, but it doesn't really matter as long as they're used as a tool to unlock other learning. And like I said earlier, that you can add more, and there's probably heaps that you could apply. But these are the ones that I start with. Obviously, the underlying concepts are crucial, and the concept of hauora and health promotion particularly are really important. And so I spend quite a lot of time throughout the year bringing the concepts back to these underlying concepts. The socio-ecological perspective is interwoven through everything. It just about features on a daily basis that you're working with a school student, because it's so ingrained with lots of other threshold concepts. And often, I'll talk about this a bit later, about the models that the kids start to develop. These types of things inform some of these. And obviously attitudes and values are really important throughout. Social construction, the functionalist approach, power hegemony, the next one about the athlete talent development, athlete as a project, probably a borderline threshold concept, but it certainly does unlock a lot of interesting discussion. Healthism is a massive thing to understand policy, to the way people, their attitudes and values. It's really important. Cultural capital and social justice are two that I find really useful, because that links really well to some real strong social themes when the kids need to start unpacking them and discussing them. I'll come back to, I just see another question pop up about the camper model. What I'll do is, when I talk about the tutorials, I'll discuss how I would use the camper model, and I'll take it from there. Okay. So threshold concepts, they can be what you want them to be, but you need clarity about which ones you're going to focus on. So the tutorials for me are really important. I only have 40 to 50 minutes with the students before school on a Thursday. I really like the idea of putting food on though, and maybe I'd get a few more showing up if I did that. So James Nottingham is a really influential educator for me, and learning about his approach and understanding of learning has actually helped me transform my tutorials. And I think over the 10 years that I've been running tutorials, I've certainly evolved. And to what they look like now is probably a bit different to what I used to do, where I was probably very much about, this is what I know, and everybody sit back and enjoy what I'm talking about. Now I make some really deliberate acts to do things quite in a very deliberate manner about creating the learning pit. In the back of, and I'll talk about the learning pit again shortly, but in the back of the underpinning all of this is this understanding that a scholarship student has to be working at a certain level. So critical thinking we've touched on, the idea of abstraction and generalization, the ideas about integration of knowledge and bringing knowledge together and applying knowledge, and this idea about complexity and understanding how things connect. So this I've just taken out, or I can't remember where this document comes from. It's been around for a while, but it's also something that holds really true. And it's important that we come back to this when we're trying to construct our tutorials. And you'll see that some of these concepts come through really strongly in the examples that I'm going to give you now. So the learning pit is a bit of a classic design, but the bit of it that I really like is the cognitive conflict. And that is where your tutorials have to take kids. They have to be in a place where that there is a little bit of conflict with what they're thinking about. So the presentation of an idea that is challenging to them, that challenges their way of thinking, but also that there's no real right or wrong answer, and the influences that are impacting on this are really difficult to comprehend. Through the questioning and the presentation of scenarios, the kids have to go into this pit where they don't quite know where they stand, and there's multiple ideas about an approach that might be right, and they can't quite piece it together. Now that is when you get these debates, or you can tell the kids that there's a little bit of conflict going on about where they stand on a situation. So we do this in lots of different ways. We do this by a lot of questioning, a lot of probing of different ideas, a lot of encouragement of trying to get kids to think of multiple views. When you start to talk about privilege and a lack of power, and some of the ideas about how something has been created by society, then the kids start to get into this cognitive conflict. As they get more aware of what's going on, and they often have to sleep on this and come back, then they can start to find a way out of this. And the way they do that is starting to piece together bits of information, and they start to make sense of it for themselves. And that's where you can start to introduce models and theories, and they can start to align themselves with what they think is good, or what resonates with them a little bit. And then I would start to encourage them to make their own models and theories and bringing things together. And gradually they start to come out of it, and they start to get a position of what they view as a great way of moving forward. It might be about talent development. It might be ideas of health promotion, or the idea of the social construction of violence in sport. Eventually, through this conflict, they'll take a position and take a stance. Once they've got that clarity, that their writing becomes so much stronger. But the trick is to make those tutorials a place of where cognitive conflict is present. So in a 40 to 15 minute long tutorial, it's really important to connect with relevant issues and topics. What's happening this week is relevant. So my last tutorials started with unpacking the Black Lives Matter movement. I found a really neat video from Jesse Jackson talking about his experiences as a youth athlete and those influencing factors that were apparent to him. That created lots of great discussion around some of the threshold concepts that we had, such as social construction or power or hegemony. Those types of things started to come through. Because it was relevant, because it was happening, the kids make stronger connections. And the discussions kind of go off in different directions very quickly because of it. To use the camper model within this, I'd be asking kids, what are the consequences of this view? What assumptions might be present? These types of things I use as like little scaffolds for my questioning to target more, to get more deeper exploration of a concept. The use of quotes and video clips is something that I use a lot. Quotes can be, often because they're snippets, can be interpreted in lots of different ways, and therefore they're great starting points. And so what I would often do is I produce like what I call the one pages on a concept, where I would just insert a few quotes related to this topic. And let me see, I might be able to screen share one. If I have time at the end, I'll screen share one, or I can share one of those later for you. Okay. Oh, that was a placeholder. Okay. The idea with my questioning, question is something that you have to really put thought into. It's a skill, and I think we all HPE teachers all use a lot of questioning technique. Working with school kids, it's not about figuring out what questions you're going to ask, it's really where you want the discussion to head. So with your questioning, think about where you want them to end up. Is it to make some interconnections with some threshold concepts? And then your questioning will lead them to there. But this idea of consequential flow, where one thing will lead to another, something I try and ingrain in the kids strongly, that things don't just start and stop in one point. There is always a flow of consequences, and trying to get them to understand that they will lead somewhere, and your questioning would be guide them on this journey, which is probably a whole workshop in itself around questioning. Other tools that I use to frame up within the tutorials are fallacies. I like the use of fallacies. They provide another set of a framework for students to hang a discussion on and to have a critical analysis around. So the false cause fallacy relates to so many concepts. For example, around talent development would be a massive one. The straw man argument is one that I use a lot within their writing structures. So within their essay structure, I'd encourage them to set up a straw man argument. So a straw man argument in brief is where you set up one side of an argument, but because it's a straw man, it's got some real flaws to it. It's not going to stand up to much of a debate. But within your essay or your report, once you've set your straw man up, then it's your job to blow it down and unpack it bit by bit. And that will show a range of understanding, and critical thinking will come through there really strongly. These types of fallacies, there's lots of links online around fallacies. These are the ones that I use. Have an explore, have a play, and start asking kids to see if they can identify them when you explore topics. And once you know that, then they've got a really good understanding of how to unpack things at a deeper level. mind maps we touched on earlier, which was awesome. I was really pleased to see that come through. I encourage kids to create mind maps in tutorials and after tutorials, a way of making sense of lots of things that are going on. I encourage kids to create mind maps because when they start to unpack things and want to develop a debate, I encourage them to unpack the links between the ideas as opposed to just unpacking an idea. So once they've established their mind map, then we have to figure out what you could talk about with the connections. And it's those interconnections that you get that really rich structure and the really rich understanding from, because it demonstrates a higher level understanding as opposed to someone just unpacking a topic. So that's how I use the mind maps. And again, I mean, sitting with kids and unpacking those connections is really good stuff. Whatever my next, right. Use of models is a big thing for me. I use models because as soon as someone publishes a model, you can critique it and evaluate it, and you shouldn't just agree with it. You should find alternatives. And so everywhere, even in all of the 4 scholarship documents that have been published, there are referenced models. And no doubt, if you do a bit of research, there will be an alternative model. So the PENZ Talent Development Framework is a beautifully constructed pathway, talent development pathway that looks pretty much like a pyramid to me. And therefore, you can find some some other talent development frameworks that are not pyramid in structure. There's some holistic ones from Europe around talent development. I think the Norwegian Yachting Syndicate have a talent development framework that is based on holistic development. And so researching these and getting kids to compare and contrast the differences helps them develop a greater understanding. If I just show, so the Te Whare Tapiwha model of Hauora is obviously essential, but it's a model. So therefore, we can question and challenge it. And there are some other models that we could compare and contrast it with that have got some good things about them. And the discussion, the differences between the models is again that same idea about the discussions with the mind map of getting the interconnections. So getting kids to talk about what are the differences and unpacking them is again a higher level of writing and thinking. I know I've got 2 minutes left. So one thing, the idea of readings and then more readings. Reading is important, absolutely, no doubt reading is important, but I love the idea that we encourage our kids, and this is what Kata said, about getting them to access multiple means of different resources. So whether it's a video clip or an article or something that's out there, that's really powerful, but reading is still important. The problem is that kids aren't always that keen to read, and I have to be really careful about how much I overload them. So the biggest thing is to develop curiosity. Don't start overly academic. Look for review-based readings and maybe start with snippets or quotes and things like that first. Are probably more important than dumping a whole bunch of stuff for them. Now, yeah, I've raced through, and I think I've got with 1 minute to spare. I've probably skimmed across quite a bit, but yeah, that's pretty good, I think. So if there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer some, but otherwise, that might be our time, is it, Juliet and Heather? Yeah.
That is to the point on timing, Aaron. Well done there. Lots of great information from both presenters there. There's a lot to process, and I'm really excited that people have the ability to go back and review this, because trying to absorb all of that goodness coming out of that session is it's challenging even for some of our large academic brains. So 2 very different approaches to scholarship preparation, and both which I think will see fantastic results. So I think that coming through here, you have answered a lot of the questions as you've gone through. I don't think there's anything pressing that we really need to address in the Q&A section, but as I said, this will be available on the PENZ conference website within 24 hours once Carl sorts his stuff out there and gets that through. So, yeah, massive thank you from us, and enjoy the rest of your holidays, team. Kata, if you're going to speak, we can't hear you, just so you know.
You just went thumbs up is all good.
Perfect.
Yeah, kia ora guys, thank you for your time and for all of your information presented. Be great to think that we could continue conversations in our clusters and local areas around what you're doing and how we can embrace some of the activities, some of the ways of thinking that you've presented there that will benefit all of our students in some way or other. So yeah, thank you very much, people.
Kia ora.
Ngā mihi.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.